Hi, in this film we're going to be thinking about modulation. Modulation meaning a change of key. So you'll be played a short piece of music that begins in a particular key that will be named, and then it's going to modulate to a different key. And you can either name the new key as D major or F minor or whatever it is, or you can describe the relationship of the new key to the original key. And in many ways, that's a much safer thing to do. For example, if you have a piece of music that starts in F major but modulates to B flat major, there's always the risk that you're going to make a little mistake there and say that it's modulated to B major instead of B flat major. Well, of course, B major's got 5 sharps, B flat major's got 2 flats, so you've effectively named the wrong key. But if you say that it's modulated to the subdominant key, then you don't have to worry about that. So it's a very good thing to be aware of which key you're in, to be able to name that key as B flat major. But for the purposes of grade 7, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You just have to name the relationship. So how do we go about doing this task? Because there are 3 possibilities for grade 7. We'll start in the tonic key, obviously, which will be named, and you can either be modulating to the dominant key, or to the subdominant key, or to the relative key. So let's just think about what that means for a moment. Now, hopefully everybody's happy that the dominant is the 5th. So if we're in C major and we're modulating to the dominant, we're going to the key that's 5 notes up into C major. So C, D, E, F, G. The dominant of C is G. So if I go from C major to G major, I've modulated to the dominant key. It's the key that's based on the dominant of C major. If I've modulated to the subdominant, then I've gone to the 4th key. So if I'm in C, C, D, E, F. If I modulate from C major to F major, I've gone to the subdominant key. And obviously if I'm in a major key, I might well modulate to that major key's relative minor. Or if I'm in a minor key, then I might modulate to the relative major. But in fact, for grade 7, we only have tests that are in a major key. So in fact, we'll be just modulating to the relative minor. So having explained that, we could just shoot that on the board and just consider this option of the relative minor. Now, if you hear a change of tonality from major at the beginning to minor at the end, well, that makes it pretty clear, doesn't it, that you've gone to the relative minor. But if it starts major and finishes major, you know you've got a 50-50 option between the dominant and the subdominant, and that's the one that sometimes is a little bit tricky. But there are ways of doing that. First of all, let's just get tuned into the possibility of a piece that begins in a major key and modulates to the relative minor. Just so we're crystal clear about what we mean by the relative minor, we're talking about the minor key that shares the same key signature with its relative major. So C major has got no sharps, no flats. A minor has got no sharps, no flats in the key signature. So A minor is the relative minor of C major. Or you could say C major is the relative major of A minor. But for now, we're starting in a major, we're going to a minor. Remember that the relative minor key is always a 3rd below its major. So if I'm in C major, I go C, B, A to find A minor. Now you've got to be a bit careful if you're naming keys, because as we increase the flats or sharps in a key signature, you may find that you're not in B minor, you're in B flat minor. So be a little bit careful about that if you're going to name keys. But if you want to think in keys, the relative minor is always a 3rd below its relative major. To be specific, it's always a minor 3rd below its relative major. But for the purposes of this test, you just need to be able to hear this change of tonality from major to minor. Here's a chord of C major, and I'm going to play a phrase that modulates to the relative minor to A minor. See if you can hear that. So can you hear we've finished on that minor chord? There's a cadence in a minor key. And did you hear that bright tonality of the major key at the first point? Then did you hear that it moved? We introduced an accidental, the raised seventh in the minor key, just to move us into the minor key. So that's modulated from C major to A minor. It's modulated from C major to its relative minor. Let's just have another example or two of that. Here's a chord of G major this time, and we're going to its relative minor. You might have heard the point where the modulation took place, but the main thing is to hear we've finished in a minor key, and we've definitely finished on a minor chord. If you can hear that minor chord at the end, then you know you've gone to the relative minor. Okay, just do one more. Here's F major. Can you hear that's modulated to D minor, the relative minor? So hopefully dealing with this one shouldn't be too awkward. Okay, let's now take on the dominant and the subdominant. Here's a piece of music in C major, and I'm going to modulate to the dominant key. So that's modulated to the dominant key, G major. Just listen to one that modulates from C major to the subdominant key of F major. So here's C major. Okay, now you might just be able to hear that straight away and have no trouble with this at all. And certainly if you've got perfect pitch, this is a relatively straightforward question to deal with. But you may just be thinking, well, how would I know that I've gone to the dominant or to the subdominant? Now, if that's a bit of a sweat for you, I'm going to teach you a little technique that will just get you started on this. And we just need to think about this for a moment. If I'm in C major, then the tonic note is in the tonic chord. So there's C major, and I'm now singing the tonic note, this C, it's at the bottom of that chord. Now if I modulate to the subdominant key, then the tonic chord of the subdominant key is this. So I'm in C major, I'm going to F major because F major is the subdominant. The tonic chord of F major is F, A, C. And can you hear and see that we've still got C in that? So I had a C at the bottom of the tonic chord of C major, and I've still got a C in the tonic chord of the subdominant key. It's not at the bottom, it's at the top now, isn't it, of that triad, but it's still there. So if I'm singing C at the beginning when I'm in C major, and I'm still singing that C at the end, and I can hear it in the tonic chord, that means I've modulated to the subdominant key. However, if I modulate to the dominant key, I'll have gone from C major to G major, and the tonic chord in G major will be this. It will be G, B and D, and there's no C in it. So I've been singing C from the beginning, and now my C clashes with this chord. You see, this might be a very useful technique. If you find it difficult to sort out whether something's modulated to the dominant or to the subdominant, one technique to get you going on this is to sing the original tonic for dear life all the way through the piece. And when you get to the final chord, just ask yourself, is that original tonic in this final chord or not? Because if it is in the final chord, you know you've modulated to the subdominant key, and if it isn't in the last chord, you know that it's modulated to the dominant key. Now this comes with certain dangers attached, because one thing that can happen is you can start singing the tonic note, and as the piece unfolds and various chords clash with that tonic note, you start to move your tonic. So if you start to sing the tonic note and then the chords that you're listening to make you think, whoa, the tonic's moved somewhere else, then it's going to be no use to you. So you've got to be really kind of firm about holding on to the original tonic note all the way through. But that's one little trick. If the tonic note is in the last chord, you must have modulated to the subdominant, because the tonic will be in the tonic chord of the subdominant key. But if you've modulated to the dominant, then your tonic should clash with that final chord. So if you can do that and sustain the tonic, that will give you an answer. If you think, oh my goodness me, that note that I'm singing does fit with the final chord, but I know I've moved it, well, it might just be an indication that you've moved to the dominant key because you've shifted your tonic. But life gets a bit dangerous once you go down that route. But it's a way of getting into this. Hopefully, in the long run, you'll develop a sense of what the dominant feels like and what the subdominant feels like. Of course, there are other things you can do. If you can sing the original tonic and then you can sing the new tonic, you could go 1, 2, 3, 4. That must be the subdominant. If you can sing the original tonic and then you can sing the new tonic, you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you know you've modulated to the dominant. So these are all ways of using the original tonic to try and get you there. Okay, now let's see how we get on if we try a few of these. So here's a tonic chord of C major. And I'm going to modulate either to the subdominant or to the dominant key. And what we're going to try doing this time is holding on to that tonic. So if you start singing the tonic, see if you can hold on to that tonic even though some of the chords will clash with it. And then see if this tonic is part of the last chord. So here we go. La. Can you hear that's clashing with the last chord? So that must have modulated to the dominant key. Let's try it again. Here's the tonic chord. La. So we're going to sing the tonic all the way through. La. Oh, can you hear this tonic is in the new tonic chord? So that must have modulated to the subdominant key. So hopefully that will give you a way of just sorting out what's a subdominant and what's a dominant. And you might want to rewind the film at this point and just rehearse that a little bit. So those are the options. We start in a given key, we go to the dominant, we go to the subdominant, or we go to the relative minor. And the original key will always be a major key. Okay, let's try a few real examples of this. So here's the tonic chord. So you'll only hear this once, okay? It doesn't get played twice, only once. So see if you can sing that tonic for dear life, if that's the technique you're going to employ, and tell me if it's modulated to the dominant, the subdominant, or the relative minor. Here's the tonic chord C major. What do you think? First question is, have we finished in a major key or a minor key? Hopefully you can hear the major finish. That's definitely a major chord. So we can eliminate the relative minor. Question is it the dominant key or the subdominant key? Well, that was the original chord of C major, so I'm singing C. Here's the last chord. It feels like a clash. I can't hear any C's in that last chord. So it's definitely modulated to the dominant key. You could name that as G major if you want to, or you can simply say it's modulated to the dominant key. Okay, here's a new one. We're in F major now. Here's the tonic chord. Where do you think that's gone? Well, that's gone to the subdominant key, or you could name it as B flat major. So here was the original F major, and I'm singing this tonic, and here's the last chord, and of course that tonic is in it. So we've gone to the subdominant key there. Okay, let's go on to a third example. This one starts in A major. Here's the tonic chord. Where do you think that's modulated to? Well, hopefully in that case you can hear that we finished on a minor chord. We've definitely gone to a minor key at the end, haven't we? There's a minor chord. You can name the key if you want to. If you do, make sure you name it as F sharp minor, because the relative key of A major is F sharp minor, not F minor. F minor's got 4 flats, F sharp minor's got 3 sharps, so it's a very different situation. So F sharp minor, or simply the relative minor. Here's the next example. B flat major is our starting point. Where do you think that's gone? Well, that's definitely gone to the relative minor. And whatever you do, by this point, don't be hanging on to any kind of notion about major keys being happy and minor keys being sad, because there are plenty of happy pieces in minor keys. So really listen out for that tonality. Hopefully you can hear that solid minor chord finish. Okay. Next example starts in G major. Here's the tonic chord of G major. Where do you think that's gone? Well, that's modulated to the dominant key of D major. Hopefully you can hear major finish. And hopefully if you were holding on to the tonic, you can hear it clashes with the final chord. So that's a good indication that we've gone to the dominant key. Okay, here's one last example. We're in E flat major. Here's the tonic chord of E flat major. Where do you think that's gone? Well, hopefully you can eliminate the relative minor because there was a major chord at the end. And if you were holding on to the original tonic of E flat, you can hear it's in the last chord, so that's gone to the subdominant. So there we are, a little bit of practice in dealing with this modulation test. And hopefully, if you struggle with this, that idea of just holding on to the tonic will help you to sort out the dominant, subdominant question. And we've had a bit of practice in just being sure about whether we've finished in a major key or a minor key, which should help you to make the decisions that have to be faced there. So good luck with the modulation test, and when you've had enough practice at that, come back to the next film when we'll be talking about the final section of the grade 7 oral tests.